Hello, and welcome to the Hawaii Health Data Warehouse's Coffee Break Monthly Webinar Series. I am Julia Josie, a public health epidemiologist with the Hawaii Health Data Warehouse, or HHDW. Today, we're going to be exploring the latest birth record data collected as part of the National Vital Statistics System. So I'll give you just a little history. There are records of birth and death data collection all the way back to the start of the United States, but the official system took a little time to build. In 1902, the U.S. Census Bureau was authorized to obtain death data for residents of the country. And then in 1915, the National Birth Registration System was established. And by 1933, all states were registering live births and deaths. In 1960, the National Center for Health Statistics was established to help oversee this system, and that's now part of the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. In Hawaii, birth records are managed by the Office of Health Status Monitoring in the Hawaii State Department of Health. Birth record data is extracted from birth certificates, which are completed for each live birth in the state. Birth certificates are usually completed by the parents and the attending medical professional. Information is collected about the birth, the baby, and the parents. It is important to note that for babies that are adopted at birth, the data collected is about the adopted mother, not the birth mother. HHDW houses birth record data for the state from 2000 to 2024. It should be noted that the birth certificate underwent some changes in 2014. So as a result, there are some indicators that are not comparable before and after this year. Those are indicated in the website. The CDC has also established suppression criteria for reporting birth data, and HHDW follows those guidelines. So specifically, cells with counts between 1 and 9 births are suppressed for confidentiality, and rates that are based on cells with counts of less than 20 are suppressed for statistical reliability. If you are interested in obtaining record-level birth data for the state, HHDW can help you through this process. I'll show you where that can be found on the website during the demo. As we'll see when we go to the live site, there are 3 types of birth queries available in HHDW. First, there are counts and percentages. And then second, there are population rates. And third, there are population rates by Department of Health, race, ethnicity. And we'll discuss the differences between these queries next. So starting with birth counts and percentages, you can query counts or number of births by a variety of dimensions, and we'll look at those in the demo. The percent queries include information about infant birth weight, specifically the percent of infants born with a low or a very low birth weight. There's also indicators about prenatal care, and last, some percentages about gestational age to identify preterm and early preterm births. For the counts and percentages queries, you can look at the data by a variety of dimensions. So for geography, you can actually look at all births in Hawaii or only births to residents of the state. There are different levels of geography available depending on which you choose. So if you're just looking at births for residents of the state, you can actually explore more granular geography down to the primary care service area. And of course, you can also query the data by year, both individual years and custom aggregates, and also some characteristics of the mother and father, including age and race ethnicity. There are also several dimensions available for infant characteristics. So these include sex, race, ethnicity, birth weight, gestational age, and plurality, which is whether it was a single birth or multiple birth. And you can also explore the data by prenatal care received by the mother. Moving into those other 2 types of queries, these are for birth rates. The first is the crude birth rate. This is the number of births per 1,000 population. And then next is the fertility rate, which captures the number of births per 1,000 women aged 15 to 44 years. And last is the teen birth rate, which is the number of births per girls aged 15 to 19 years. And then you'll notice there's 2 different sets of those. And we'll look at the difference between the population rates and the population rates by DOH race ethnicity. But first, in general, the birth rate data can be explored by geography, year, and age or race ethnicity of the mother. These dimensions are more limited than for the birth counts and percentages because these estimates require also information about the population size and composition. So we're a little more limited in how we can look at the data, but still see mother's age and race ethnicity in addition to geography and year. And then here are some things to remember when exploring birth rates in HHDW. First, the numerator includes births to resident women only. So as opposed to the counts and the percentages where you could choose, the rates only include births to resident women. And here is where we see the difference between population rates and population rates by DOH race ethnicity. So the first is based on population estimates from the US Census. And these include estimates for the population by age and sex. For the DOH race ethnicity rates, the denominator is actually based on a special 5-year aggregate that is created by the census for Hawaii, and it uses the Office of Health Status Monitoring race ethnicity algorithm. We obtained these special aggregates beginning in 2010, so birth rates by DOH race ethnicity are only available from 2010 forward. And in case you're curious, here is the Office of Health Status Monitoring race ethnicity algorithm. We need this because the birth certificate allows you to actually select up to 4 race ethnicities. But for statistical analysis, we really need a set of rules in place for coding everybody to a single race ethnicity, even if that might be multiple races. So for those birth certificates that list more than one race ethnicity, here are the rules, followed by Hawaii. So essentially, if Hawaiian is listed, then Hawaiian is coded. If a non-white race ethnicity is listed with white, then the non-white option is coded. And then the last 2 rules talk about the order in which they're coded, if there was more than one non-white or more than one white listed. Because of this special algorithm and the work that the census does for us, we can actually look at these 10 different categories of race ethnicity. And this is really good, obviously, given the diversity of the population of Hawaii. It's really important to be able to explore the data by more granular race ethnicity options. Okay, we're going to jump in. Okay, so here is our HHDW homepage. You can see that you can get to our sister website, Hawaii Health Matters, very easily. If you already know your data source that you want to explore, you can go straight there. We also have a little bit of information and some tutorials, and then news and announcements. This is also where you can register for the coffee break next month if you are interested. And we talk about our recent data releases and our featured content. But what we're interested in looking at is the birth data. So we're going to go up here to data sources and click birth data. And this will take us to a landing page with some helpful information about the birth data. So here is some of the information that I went over in the intro. There's also a link to a data tool that's run by CDC. We have data release notes in case anything changes that people need to be aware of with that year of data. And then here we have the number of births per year. And down here, when I mentioned if you were interested in getting record level data, here is where you would go for that. And this will give you the instructions. We also have a report request in case you're looking for something and having trouble finding it, you can submit a report request. Okay, so there's very helpful information on this page, but we're interested in looking at the data. So we're going to build a custom birth report. And here you'll see, again, just a little bit of basic information. Here is the link to those data release notes. There actually have been no changes with the 2024 data, so there's no updates to that. And you can also get to our most recent coffee break on our vital statistics data. So below that, here is where we get into the data, and you'll recognize these 3 queries from the intro slides. We've got our counts and percentages, and 2 versions of rates. So let's look at our counts and percentages first. And when you hover over the question marks over here, you can get some more detail about each one of these indicators. Let's just look at counts first. We'll keep it very simple. What you'll see is our default result page. So what you're going to see is the number of births in the state for the 3 most recent years of data. So you can see here the different numbers. There's also a data table. And if you scroll down here, there's also some data notes. So this will give you, again, a little bit of information about the data, about the suppression. There's also a suggested citation here. So if you are interested in using any of this data in a report or anything like that, you could use that suggested citation if it makes it easier. Okay, but here is where we are able to actually modify this grid. So we're going to look here, and you're going to see several steps, but these are actually filters. So you don't have to change. You don't have to take 7 steps. You only need to change things that you want to change. So the default here is going to be birth location. As I mentioned, you can look at births by all births in Hawaii or for women who reside in Hawaii. So we'll just leave that as all births. The default shows you the 3 most recent years of data. You can change that. You can create your own custom aggregate. And then, as I mentioned, there are some demographic options. So this would be if you wanted to limit your sample to a particular age group or a particular race ethnicity and prenatal care. But this is really where you're telling the system how you want to see the data. So right now we're looking at it by year. I'm going to go ahead and do it by age group. So now what we're looking at, again, it's the number of births for those 3 most recent years because I didn't change that. But now we're looking at the number of births by age group. And we can see a fairly expected distribution of births across the different age groups. And again, we have our data table. Here we have an indication that this count is very small, so it might be unstable. And then just to give you an example of how you can use these types of things as filters. So for example, say you were just interested in the number of births to Filipino women by age group. Now we're looking at the same data, but it's limited to Filipinas. So that's where those options can come in very handy. So that's a look at the counts. Let's take a look at one of the percentages. So let's look at prenatal care, and we're going to look at the percent with no prenatal care. So again, what we see here are the 3 most recent years of data for the state. We can see there've actually been some fairly large and significant drops in the percentage of births with no prenatal care. So this is a very good thing. And again, down here we have the percentage and the confidence interval and the count. So here, let's look at, we can also do the same thing here and look at a different dimension. So instead of looking at the data by year, let's look at it by birth weight. And here again, you can kind of see sort of expected. For women who don't get any prenatal care, there's a higher percentage of very low and low birth weights. This demonstrates the importance of prenatal care, but also shows you how you can modify this data and really explore it to get the information that you need most. Okay, let's go now to the rates. So we're going to look at the population rates first. We're going to just look at the crude birth rate. And again, we can see here the 3 most recent years of data. Here too, maybe we're interested in looking at the data by mother's age. Again, now that we're looking at rates, that's slightly fewer options for dimensions to look at the data because we need that population data too. But we are able to look at the crude birth rate by age. So again, you can kind of see it does mirror the counts. And one other thing we could do here, just another example, is we can look at county level data. So here now we can say we want to see the data by geographic area. And now we can see the 4 major counties of the state with all their varying birth rates. And here, whenever you see these 3 little dots, it means that you can sort the data. So now we can see easily Maui County has the lowest crude birth rate and Honolulu has the highest. So that's an example of some of the things that you can look at with rates. Let's look at the fertility rate, but this time by DOH race ethnicity. So here is where we use the special data from the census. And again, here especially, I think this is a really good time to use that sort function. So we can see here that this is the fertility rate per 1,000 women. And if you're not sure what the fertility rate is, it's the number of live births. And we can see it here by our DOH race ethnicity. So we can get a more granular idea of fertility rate in the state. So let's go ahead and go back. I do want to remind you that we also have a lot of vital statistics indicators in Hawaii Health Matters, and we are in the process of updating those with the 2024 data. So those should be available soon. Okay, now I want to give you some time for some hands-on work. So take a few minutes and explore the 2024 birth record data in hhtw.org and answer these questions. So the first question, how has the number of births in Hawaii changed since the year 2000? So what we're going to do here, we're going to go back to our page with our birth queries. This is just asking about the number of births. So we're going to go here. We're going to modify this query because we want to see all of the years of data available. And we're going to look at it by year so we can see what that trend looks like. And what we'll see here is that there was a little bit of an increase and then it's actually been on the decrease. This year is a little bit higher than last year, but both of those are still lower than the previous 20 plus years. Okay, so the next question, which county had the lowest fertility rate among resident women aged 15 to 44 in 2024? Okay, so we're looking for a rate. It's interested in the fertility rate, women aged 15 to 44, and it is asking about the county. So we are going to set the geography to county. The question specified for 2024, so we will make sure that we just put that. And then we need to tell the system that we want to see it by geography. And now we can see here the 4 major counties. The question was asking which one had the lowest fertility rate. So that answer would be Maui County with 54.5. And then the last question is asking about teen birth rate by DOH race ethnicity. So this is when we're going to go into this query. We're interested in teen births. And here we can see, this is data for the 3 most recent years, but divided out by race ethnicity, we get a lot of very low values. So they're suppressed. So the question asks, which group had the highest teen birth rate among females aged 15 to 19 from 2019 to 2024? So this, when you have these small sample sizes, if you can add extra years of data, sometimes that'll help show you more estimates. So you can see here, we still have some that are suppressed, but we're seeing a lot more than we did before. And this was asking which group had the highest. So we can see here are other Pacific Islander teens with 45.0. Let me put the answers up for you. And I'd like you to join us in April for our next coffee break webinar. On April 7th, we're going to be showcasing a brand new tracker in Hawaii Health Matters, the Diabetes Plan 2030 tracker. So please join us to see what that new tracker has to offer. Thank you so much for coming today. If you have any questions, please contact us at profiles@hhdw.org. So we look forward to seeing you in April when we'll be exploring the new Diabetes Plan 2030 tracker in Hawaii Health Matters. Mahalo again for joining us and enjoy your day.